Okay.
So letting the hips have as much movement as they want at this moment. And I just naturally start with the roots and kind of scan from the lower Dantian down to see what's going on down there, because that's what's got to hold the rest of it up. So if I've got a feeling of shortness on one side, or one hip feels a little tighter, I know my hips are going to be off, and therefore the whole leg all the way down to my foot is going to be off. So I want to be aware of that. Spending a little extra time. And if you're doing this from a chair, then circling the upper body, it gets into the pelvis anyway. Okay, so we're circling. And then when you turn the opposite direction, I just take that opportunity to go through into my sacrum and my SI joints on the side and into my low back. And bringing awareness into that area over your kidneys and up into behind your heart and up to the shoulders, and noticing the natural spiraling that happens, even though I'm not taking my head and spinning my head, I'm spinning the middle. The head is sort of the a still point, especially the crown point, but because everything's spiraling underneath, you're getting spiraling all the way into the skull. You're moving that spinal cord and all the fascia attached to it as it goes up into the foramen magnum in your head. So just thinking that everything gets to move, even though it's more subtle, up to the top of your head. Rarely do you think of the fascia that goes into your brain, that, that gently moving that in your brain and just kind of letting stuff release in there, even though it's really subtle. Okay, so bringing my shoulders into movement. I'm letting my heart open. Tops of shoulders get tight. Between the shoulder blades can often get tight or really overstretched. And the front often gets tight. So once the shoulders start to mobilize and everything's moving, you can think about the ribs opening, the sternum opening, the clavicles moving up and down. And then circle the other way. All right. And then having moved the top of the shoulders, which of course moves into the neck, I pick up the crown point and bring my ear towards the shoulder and stretch those muscles that actually I just activated through the shoulder movement. Then turning out the opposite hand and letting it go up through the side of the neck. My neck seems to need it this morning. All right, so we're going to do a few roll downs, very gently, dropping the nose and softening around the solar plexus and then around. And the reason I like to think of softening around these areas is it kind of bends my spine more like bamboo, just a continual bend. so I can bend around my heart and my solar plexus and my lower Dantian, and really feel the back opening and letting the arms hang. Just letting that low back really stretch. And then rolling side to side. So I am at knee level because that's going to focus more on my low back rather than into my hamstring. So this is more for my back. And you could notice, just continually noticing as I go from left to right, does it feel tighter when I move? Because when I turn to one side, I'm really stretching the ligaments around my SI joint area. And if you have one side that's more sore than the other, then you kind of know that the pelvis is probably going to be a little out of whack as well if you only have one side that you feel that tightness. So I drop the tail and I roll back up. And I lift up my heart and lift up my crown. And this time I'm going to roll down. And when my hands get below my knees, noticing you get a feel through the hamstrings. Then you just stop where you get enough of a feel. And then when you roll side to side, this time it's kind of a gentle twisting, kind of like a gentle wringing out of your hamstrings. And just feeling again into that low back. I have one SI joint that's talking, so I know that my pelvis is a little off. And then I drop my tail and I roll back up. And we'll go one more time. And this time you just go to the level. If it felt good to stay with your back, stay with your back. If you want to go further into the stretch in your legs, the further down you go, the more you're going to feel it down, in the attachments behind your knee. Even you could even feel it through your calf. So as I roll forward, go to whatever level feels right to you, and then rolling side to side. So when you get temperature changes, like here, we had like 80 degrees last weekend, or maybe above 80 degrees, and now we're down to freezing. Does have an effect on the fascia. And sometimes the long muscles, like your hamstrings, really feel that change. It just seemed like people were complaining about their hamstrings this week. So I'm going to drop my tail and roll back up. And I'm going to lift my crown. So we're going to go into opening the upper, and then we're going to do some stretches for the lower, so that where the whole body gets a multi-directional opening from the center. Okay, so just doing the upper body movement. So again, if you're doing these on your own, they get easier the more you do them, of course, like anything. You don't have to do a ton, but the slower you go, the better. So expressing the heels of the hands. So I want to make sure I have a little tone at my lower abs, so I can keep my tailbone a little drawn into the earth, and the chin in alignment, so not forward, but just a little bit back, not tucking the chin, but just a little bit more in the middle. Let one drop and the other one starts to rise, and then push from your feet to your crown. So lengthening through the torso is going to help position the shoulder so that you can eventually get to pressing heaven and earth. And that eventually may be today, and that eventually may be next year, but the eventually is that you open the thorax. And then you slowly come back, almost like there's resistance that you're moving through. And then try the other side. First, the dropping is easy. The early lift is not too hard, but then you want to add push from the crown, the feet to the crown, so that you lengthen the torso, which helps open up the shoulder joint. Part of the shutting down the shoulder joint is our kyphotic curve of the upper back. And once we can lengthen that, the shoulder can open. So it's not just the shoulder joint that we're working on here. We're working on the thoracic spine, the whole spine. Okay, so we're going to come back down. This is the traditional way. If you were taking Alex's class, you would stop after 2 and release your wrists. And that's kind of nice if you have wrist issues. It takes a while for the carpal tunnel, if you haven't done these exercises, to kind of relax and open. And if you can't really get this position, just, imply opening through, like you're pushing through the heel of the hand, and don't overdo it. If you start to get tingling in your fingers, you're just annoying your nerve. All right, so then we start again. Slowly coming up, you can just lift your spine a little bit from your Dantian up to your shoulders, and then express the heels of the hands to whatever degree is comfortable for you, and then letting one hand drop and the other one elevate. And about 30 to 40 degrees, I would say, from the horizon, start to push from your feet to your crown. So you're opening the thorax, which allows the shoulder to move more. Pushing up, pushing down, chin in, a little tone at your lower abs to keep your tailbone directed to the earth, and then slowly come back. So again, the more intention I have with this, the better off I am. So again, letting one relax. The 30 to 40 degrees up is usually not too hard. It is shoulder muscles. But then pushing from your crown, your feet to your crown, and lengthening your thorax to make the room for the shoulder joint to open. And then press heaven and press earth. And you want to activate the back as best you can. So if you feel a little backward push through the fingers on the top and the wrist on the bottom, you're going to feel the muscles across your back activating. I know I've gotten stronger back there because of this. So they're not things that we commonly use, because most of our movement is forward and down with our arms. So now we're going to go out to the side, just slowly turning, keeping my hips as forward as I can, letting the heart turn towards the side, and then with your hips really forward and your knees and your toes forward, try to push back with that arm. And if you feel a little heat and exercise in the back of your shoulder, then you're generally reciprocally getting an opening in the front of the shoulder, which is great. So you feel really tight in the front of your shoulders from whatever it is that you do all day, and most of us do a lot to tighten the front of the chest, then just doing this mindfully a couple of times will start to neurologically release some of that holding on the front and activate the back to again be able to hold your arm up in space from the back. The bigger muscles are on the back. So my hips are forward, my knees are forward, my toes are forward, my spine is rotating, and I'm pressing through my hands when I hit that point where I can't move anymore without turning my hips. Feeling the muscles on the back of the shoulder working, and then slowly come back. Okay, so we're going to do one more on each side. Keep working on your feet to crown, lengthening, and now we're opening up across, obviously hand to hand. So some of the width of the body with this rotation. So if you feel that work in the back of your shoulder, it's a good thing. And slowly come back. Again, knees with toes, hips trying to stay forward. You're isolating more of the spine in rotation. Opening the front of the chest. That gets so much. You got swimmer shoulder, you got rotator cuff. Think that I had rotator cuff and some frozen shoulder when Alex first started to do these exercises, and he was seeing that his students of a certain age were getting a lot of frozen shoulder. So I feel like some of that might have been the genesis of these exercises. So we bend the elbows, push the elbows forward, drop the tailbone, chin in, and then lift from your feet to your crown and lift your elbows. So it's not all about your shoulders. It's not all about what your elbows do. It's what your body does. Roll the shoulders out, elbows out, pointed outward, and then release the hands. Again, bend, chin in, tailbone down. It's all about how you do it, not trying to just get through a certain number. If you can keep your attention on this for a couple of times and really be there with your body, that's usually better than just repetitively doing the movement and not really paying attention to how you need to change your movement. Okay, so then we do the sit down. So the sit down allows our low back to really drop, the tailbone to really drop, which then allows the neck to be free for the crown to go up. So I drop my tail, chin is in, elbows go up, and my hands are behind me. I turn my foot out, and as I sit down, I want to sit down evenly in both feet, evenly in both hips. Then drop my elbows out to the sides, and you can look in the direction of the foot that you turned out. And then as the hands come in, the foot that's still forward is the longer hand. This is a closed hands move, arm lock move. You can look forward. Bend the hip and the elbow. I call this the home hip, the one that didn't move, stayed home. And then push out. Okay, so I'm going to bend, push the elbow forward, palms towards the ceiling, chin and tailbone down, lift the elbows up slowly, noticing what's going on. What do you need to do? Open your chest, turn your foot out, sit down evenly in both feet, keep your hips even, drop your elbows, push your hands out to the sides. And then you can fold that the move away hip a little bit to let the hands come into a forward close. And then you fold the home hip and bring that side elbow back in and push out. And really just push. And then we're just going to drop the elbows and bring the hands in. So if you're needing to open the body, crown to tail is the first thing we did. And then across the body, side to side. We're going to do a few leg stretches. We're just going to step out into double shoulder width. My floor is a little slippery, so just be careful if your floor is slippery. And letting your spine be nice and long, we're going to fold at the hip creases and let the spine be parallel to the floor. And now we have a different kind of stretch for the hamstring because I've got this torso weight drawing on my hamstring. So just let yourself feel that for a moment, that torso weight drawing your hamstrings into a stretch. Okay, and then I can just follow my legs down and I can fold my spine a little bit more deeply, only if it feels okay. So letting that stretch happen. Again, that's bladder and kidney. It's the water element. And I think it's very affected by temperature changes. So I'm going to bend my knees and sit my tailbone and just let myself feel. I'm resting my elbows on top of my thighs and I'm just letting myself feel the freedom in my low back because I'm taking up some of the space or the weight in my elbows and I'm sitting my tailbone. So I could kind of move a little bit side to side and just let my low back get a little break, a little stretch. I can drop one shoulder and drop the other shoulder and still be quite firmly secure in the floor of my feet. And then I'm going to move one leg out so I can do side adductor stretching. And then move to the other side. Stretch that adductor. Your groin, the yin meridians in your legs. So if you're doing this and trying to get your legs a little bit more flexible, a good way to do this is to try to press your foot into the floor so you warm up everything on the inside and then release and let the stretch go deeper. So press, release, let the stretch go deeper. Okay, and then you can pick up the toes, press the heel, release, let the stretch go a little deeper. And then heel, toes up, press, release, and let the stretch go deeper. It's actually a safer way to stretch because you're engaging the muscle, you know what's going to be working, you're warming it up, and then when you go for a little bit deeper stretch, the muscle's a little more ready. It's meant to, your muscle is meant to contract and extend, not get stuck in one or the other. So I'm going to walk my feet in, heel toe, and toes facing inward. I'm just going to let myself stretch with this in-toed position, which it kind of helps you with opening your SI joints, and it helps you with those turns on the corners. And then turning the toes outward, knees with the toes, and I'm just going to do a little squat here again. And if it's too much for you, just put your elbows above your knees and squat a little bit. You can kind of move your pelvis around or move your shoulders around and just feel a little freedom in there. If you've been doing this a while, we haven't done this in a while, you can put your elbows inside your shins and sit a little deeper. The full pose is to sit down and lift your hands into a prayer position. But this we haven't done in a while. Maybe we should spend some time this winter working on that stretch. So I'm going to come back up, bring the toes in. All right, bend the knees, and that was some of our stretching exercises. One last one, putting your one foot in front of the other, bending the back knee into the front knee. So I'm going to do a gallbladder stretch. So I'm going to lift up, put my hand on my hip on the other side, and just let this IT band, tensor fasciae lata, these low back muscles here, just have a nice stretch. And then switch. Bend the back knee into the back of the front knee. Put your hand on your hip, lift up, and let the side stretch. Okay, so hopefully you just feel a little bit longer. Okay,